Well, sweeping credit card reform is now enacted. Some lawmakers, though, arguing there are major holes in the bill and American consumers are still at risk. One of those lawmakers is Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. He joins us now from Washington to discuss. You are pushing for a cap on interest rates. It is something, Senator, that is not included in the latest law. Why are you pushing for this?
Well, what we have right now are millions of Americans who are paying 20, 25, 30%, or even more in interest rates on their credit cards. And frankly, that is immoral. That is usury, and that is something that we have got to end. The middle class is hurting in America, and it's just unfair to ask people to pay these outrageous interest rates. So what we are simply trying to do is extend to private banks what has existed for credit unions for decades, and that is a maximum of 15%, except another 3% under extraordinary circumstances, period. Credit unions have lived with that for years. It has worked for them, and the big banks have got to live with that as well.
Looking at why this wasn't included in the legislation, I spoke to some of the co-sponsors of the legislation, as well as those that pushed it forward, said, listen, we just couldn't get the bipartisan support we needed if we included a cap on interest rates. But then I also talked to the American Bankers Association today, the biggest lobbyist for the banks, that said, and I'll quote here, history has shown that interest rate caps harm the very people they're intended to help, low-income people with credit problems. They end up not being able to get credit. Is that the case?
Yeah, if you believe that the banks are worried about low-income and working people, I've got a couple of bridges to sell you. Look, the banks have literally spent billions of dollars in the last 10 years lobbying for what they want. They deregulated Wall Street, which led to the collapse of Wall Street and the economic recession we're in right now. They have enormous power on Capitol Hill with their money, with their campaign contributions, and they want to be able to charge people 25 or 30% interest rates in order to make money. That's the simple truth of it. They are very, very powerful. I think the American people want us to take them on, and I'm going to do everything I can to do that.
I know you're proposing an amendment to include an overall cap on interest rates. It's been proposed since the 1980s in this country. It is yet to make it through with some bipartisan support. But Well, look, forget bipartisan support here. I mean, I'd love to have Republicans on board. But the American people are less worried about bipartisan support than they are seeing legislation passed with 51 votes that says you can't rip off ordinary people. But isn't it the case that Americans do not have to sign up for credit cards that have these high interest rates? That's what you hear your opposition arguing, is then they don't have to take cards with these rates. Are you saying they don't have any other choice?
Let me say two things. For many years now, the credit card companies were essentially lying to the American people, saying 0 interest rates, 2%. And they forgot to tell the customer that they could change those rates at any time and jack them up to 20 or 25%. Point number two, with the middle class collapsing, with 17% of our people unemployed or underemployed, the sad truth is that there are many people in this country today forced to buy their groceries, get gas for their car in order to get to work with a credit card. People have no choice. So I think basically if you look at Scripture, if you look at the major religions throughout the world, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, they all talk about usury being immoral. It's unfair. It is wrong. And I think we've got to put an end to it.
You've said the banks are loan sharking. That is your opinion. When you look at what happens to interest rates now, fees are limited on these credit cards. There are some that argue that interest rates are going to go up as a result. Is that what you think is going to happen? Is that a danger?
I think it is a danger. But the bottom line is if people are paying, I get calls every week from Vermonters telling me they're paying 25 or 30% interest rates. That is loan sharking. That is outrageous. That should not be allowed. I don't know another word. If you have a better word, let me hear it. I call it loan sharking.
What, Senator, finally do you want to see the Fed do? It's now up to the Fed to come in and regulate in terms of fees and penalty interest rates. What action should the Fed take come August when they're mandated?
The Fed can do exactly what I have been talking about. If they, under their emergency powers, were able to provide trillions of dollars in zero-interest loans to large financial institutions, the Fed absolutely today has the authority to tell those large financial institutions who we bailed out that there will be a cap on the interest rates you can charge Americans. They can do it today.
Do you think the Fed will do that, realistically?
No, I don't. Nope, that's why I opposed, among other things, Mr. Bernanke's reappointment.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thanks so much, Senator.